goose-stepping Yahtzees keep getting arrested for having CP. Man, a surprising amount of far-right extremists have been caught with some of the worst content imaginable. Is this a trend, or is CP just distressingly more commonplace than most realize? Last June, according to court documents, Jared Boyce crammed himself into the back of a U-Haul with his fellow members of Patriot Front, a white supremacist group, to protest an LGBTQ pride event in Idaho, and slur attendees as groomers. Standing shoulder to shoulder with the hateful crew wearing matching khaki pants, it's unlikely Boyce knew this would result in him eventually being sentenced to a year in prison for exploitation. Wow. So they talk about Chicago and all the things that happen in Chicago whenever a black person mentions anything, right? But they don't want to mention all these white boys here who are caught with all this disgusting material. I'm just saying, it's very interesting how people applied their priorities. Once the group pulled up to the event, they were all promptly arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit a riot. Less than a month later, police seized Boyce's phone. While they weren't actively searching for illegal CP on it, they found 22 photos of CP. According to court documents, these photos involve children from toddlers to prepubescence. Oh my gosh. He also sent a picture to a 16-year-old that was highly disgusting. Right? And Boyce says, don't believe the media, Boyce reportedly told his mother following his initial arrest. We were just there because they're grooming kids. Oh, wow. So you're calling other people groomers, but you were doing it yourself, sir. Boyce pled guilty to 9 felony counts of having CP earlier this year. The Patriot Front member is hardly the first person connected to neo-Yahtzee groups to be caught with that kind of material. In just the past few months, at least 2 other members of the same types of groups in the UK were sentenced to time in prison for having CP. Wow. Luca Benincasa, a 20-year-old from Cardiff who was a cell leader for the neo-Yahtzee group Forkreek Division, was sentenced to 9 years for possession of documents likely to be useful to a terrorist, being a member of a banned group, and possessing CP. Wow. Wow. Harry Vaughan, the son of a clerk in the House of Lords in the House of Lords who studied at a fancy grammar school, was found guilty of a plethora of charges, including multiple terror offenses and possessing CP in 2020. Vaughan, who created propaganda for the neo-Yahtzee group Sonnenkreuz Division, was initially given a suspended sentence, but reoffended last September and just pleaded guilty to having CP again. The 21-year-old will be sentenced on July 31st. Some of the neo-Yahtzees who have been found with this CP also targeted kids in real life. But they always mention Chicago. Andrew Hazelton is a Maine white supremacist and a member of the New England-based neo-Yahtzee group NSC 131. In 2019, according to court documents, he actively attempted to groom a person who's under the age of 18. He met on Instagram. Hazelton messaged the person and tried to have her send him some pictures, and told this person who's under the age of 18 that he wanted to do some inappropriate things. Police found a folder on his phone that has special languages, special numbers. The numbers were, the title of this folder was 1488. And if you know anything about the far right, then you know what that means. You know what that means if you know anything about the far right. They found dozens of videos of CP. Right? Court documents indicate that Hazelton either kept the videos on or downloaded them from a folder found on Mega, a file sharing website also titled 1488. Hazelton was sentenced to 5 years in prison in 2022. This is something that has become distressingly familiar when it comes to arrests within the far right and just in the ecosystem in general. While a true data set of how many arrests on the far right have included CP or grooming isn't available, a cursory glance at arrest reports shows it occurs frequently. However, how much is truly a feature of the extreme right? Let me redo that. However, how much this is truly a feature of the extreme right is hard to know. According to experts, examples like these, and there are many more, are largely a function of the sheer prevalence of CP. Neo-Nazis are disproportionately likely to have their electronic devices shared by law enforcement and thus disproportionately likely to be charged with having CP, but no rigorous study suggests they're disproportionately likely to possess it in the first place. There is reason to think, though, that in at least some circles, it serves as an integral part of initiation into some of the most extreme and fringe corners of neo-Yazidism, with the taboo material desensitizing recruits to a point of no return and binding them to others who know and share their secret. Wow. Wow, there's a lot here, man. We got to get into this, man. The order of nine angles, or O9A, is one of the most infamous and disgusting far right groups active today. They have a decentralized, satanic neo-Yazi organization that encourages members to consume material considered vile by society. The group had been around for decades, but with the help of the internet and federal informants, their doctrine has become influential in the new wave of militant neo-Yazi accelerationist terrorist groups. Wait a minute. Some of those people might be on TikTok pretending to be far left extreme. They could have infiltrated the Black Panther Party. They could have infiltrated. Yo. Let's get into this. Hey, Ace4950, somebody like you, Dak Dizzy, share this stream. I want my people to see this, man. I'm going to go over this whole article here, man. I'm going to go over this whole piece. Screw it. Let's do it. Let's get into it, man. Yo, I say I was going to wrap it up. No, bro. No, this is deep, bro. Yo, hold on. Give me a second, bro. No, we about to get into it, bro. We about to get into it. So we're talking about the Order of Nine Angles, or O9A, right? They are encouraged to consume material that is considered vile by society, right? And they are considered to be accelerationists. While the group has undoubtedly had a large impact on the current far right, it's intentionally sensationalistic and obtuse in a way that makes reporting on it incredibly difficult. In the explainer about the group, the Institute for Strategic Dialogue writes, several O9A texts promote essay and horrible stuff as a way to transgress against civilized norms. So they promote victimizing people who are under the age of 18. They promote being a predator. Wow. Quote, O9A followers are more likely than other neo-fascists to be found with this sort of material because of their doctrinal willingness to embrace taboo and to embrace taboo, immoral, and violent practices. And analysts for the Institute for Strategic Dialogue told Vice News they did not want their name used out of fear of retaliation due to the extreme nature of the group. While some of these practices have ritual purposes, others simply desensitize practitioners to suffering and violence in a way that creates rigid points of no return. There are many opportunities to back out of participating in the violent extremist group or movement, but there is a threshold of trauma, both received and inflicted, after which those opportunities all but stop. The list of O9A affiliated neo-Yazis arrested for CP or SA is a long one. Ryan Fleming, an organizer for the banned UK neo-Yazi group National Action, actively promoted OA9, according to British anti-fascist outlet Hope Not Hate, which has done some of the best work on the OA9 on the O9A. Fleming ran a Nexion, the 09A's turn for sale in Yorkshire and was connected to the group internationally. Fleming was arrested in 2011 for imprisoning, torturing, and essaying someone who's under the age of 18. 6 years later, he was convicted for essaying someone who was under the age of 18 that he met online. Then in 2021, he was jailed again for unsupervised contact with kids. Wow. This stuff goes deep, man. Sonnenkrieg Division, an 09A connected offshoot of National Action, which itself broke up partially due to its ties to the satanic group, had several members be charged for possessing CP. Michael Schwarznick, a 19-year-old Polish national who was arrested for making terroristic threats, was found to have run a blog that encouraged essaying people who was under the age of 18. He received 4 years in prison. Jacob Turker, I want to say Shurix, another UK member, was found with terrorism propaganda and images of people who are under the age of 18 and other disgusting material, and he was sentenced to 4 years and 8 months. Quote, the contents of the images are fairly distressing. They have been clearly groomed, and there is a suggestion that these kids are forced to smile at the camera, according to a prosecutor who found the stuff on Schwarznick's phone. I hope I'm saying that name correctly, but wow. And in 2019, an unnamed 16-year-old 09A follower in the UK was convicted of essaying someone who was under the age of 18 and plotting a terror attack. The teenager was found to have drawn the 09A symbol and had written down one of their slogans. Satanic people who are Yahtzees, who are predators, can be found in North America as well, particularly in Atomwaffen, one of the most infamous neo-Yahtzee groups in recent memory, and its splitter groups. John Cameron Denton was an influential member of the group, known by his alias. Wow, his alias is RAPE. That's his alias. That's what this man is. Bruh. I'm going to highlight that, bruh. That was his name. He was known as that, bruh. Yo. Didn't lead Atomwaffen's Texas cell. He was also an 09A adherent, and under his watch, the group adopted 09A's aesthetics and began to promote some of their literature. In 2020, Denton was arrested in connection to a swatting ring. During the investigation, prosecutors stated they found evidence Denton shared disgusting images of one of his fellow neo-Yahtzees' underage girlfriend. So one of the other members of his same group was dating someone who's under the age of 18, which is disgusting by itself, but he had images on his phone. Yo! In fact, according to court documents, authorities were told by an informant that Denton traded CP back and forth with another white supremacist. Denton eventually pleaded guilty to swatting charges and was sentenced to 41 months in prison in 2020. It wasn't just Denton, according to court documents. Police initially went to interview Benjamin Bogart, another Atomwaffen neo-Yahtzee, over threats of mass violence he made online. While doing so, they executed a search warrant and found videos of full-grown adults doing horrible stuff to people who were under the age of 18. Bogart was sentenced to 80 months in prison for possession of CP. But it's a pattern now, as you can see. Right? According to Christopher Combs, who was an FBI agent who worked on the case, quote, testimony and evidence presented in this case in this case demonstrated the defendant's fixation with committing barbaric and inhumane acts of violence against people who are under the age of 18 and others. End quote. Most recently, Angel Almeida, a 22-year-old New York man, was charged with creating and distributing CP in 2021. Almeida was caught because of his explicit social media posts bragging about his crimes, including one photo he posted on Instagram showing him in front of a special Nazi symbol with a sign that says, I am addicted to hardcore CP. When police raided his house, they found 09A material. He has yet to be tried. As you can see on the stream, this man was wearing that shirt with that symbol, with that on his computer screen. The group's influence is widespread partially because 09A encourages members to undertake insight roles where they join other groups in order to sow chaos. Therefore, 09A's fingerprints can be found in many prevalent groups acting today. It was particularly influential within militant accelerationist groups that were extremely active in the late 2010s, like Atomwaffen and the Base, one former member of an infamous neo-Nazi group that had elements of the 09A inside of it, who did not want to be named for legal reasons, told Vice News that inside chats, the material was joked about but never shared. Wow. So the informant says, quote, once again, the informant says, quote, the further down you go along that rabbit hole, the more extreme and unironic it becomes. In some cases, I was surprised to hear fellow Yahtzees were caught with CP, but in a lot of cases, unfortunately, I wasn't really surprised, especially if they had been involved, at least in the aesthetic of the 09A. At times, it was hard to tell fiction from reality. When one of the members of their group was arrested for possessing CP, they all just believed that it was planted by the feds, even though the accused had posted jokes about it. So every time a member of 09A was caught, they would say, oh, it's the feds, but the same person who was caught was joking about the same material. The line between who actually followed the tenets of the Order of Nine Angles and who was just using the satanic outfits, overly edgy aesthetic for shock value was blurry. So as you can see, guys, this is a real thing, man. This is a real thing. I can't get over this dude's name, bro. I can't get over this dude's name. He was known to his allies as RAPE. That was his nick. This dude's name was John Cameron Denton, white supremacist neo-Yahtzee. And they talk about black men in freaking Chicago and how we somehow criminals. The dominant white society and anti-black racists love projecting, man. They love this man here, Angel Almeida, white supremacist, neo-Yahtzee, as you can see. Look at the kind of things this man posts on his page.